Have you ever made judgments about someone before you got to know them? Were your judgments accurate? Or have you ever been the one being judged? Today, we will talk about Chapter 2, Perceiving Others, Perceiving Ourselves. First, we will discuss person perception, then inaccurate perception, and finally, identity management. Making judgments about someone is called person perception. We all partake in person perception. This will be where we determine a person's behavior and or personality. Perception comes from sensory information, then we continue to make further educated guesses about that person. For instance, you notice the new girl Becky at school is always happy. You might assume that she is friendly to others. After we form a perception about someone, you decide whether or not to interact with the person. So given that you assume that Becky is friendly, you might engage in conversation to actually get to know her. Mental associations are quick thoughts that we have based on life experiences, culture, media, and information that people give you. So we already have basic knowledge, and we use these ideas to make judgments about people, thus being person perception. Now that we have discussed person perception, let's talk about how our perceptions of others may be inaccurate. While forming person perception, it is based on limited information. You come to realize that your assumptions may not be accurate. Perception is usually based on appearance, which is the least effective way to judge a person. Don't judge a book by its cover. Another note is the fundamental attribution error, where we overestimate the personal characteristics of a person. This is our tendency to explain a person's behavior based on internal factors like personality and underestimate external factors. So if you see that Becky is helping another student who is struggling in the class and you blame her personality, you have made the fundamental attribution error. Once we form a perception of someone, we tend to stick to it. Even if we notice behavior that opposes our assumptions, we still will assume that our initial thought. So, one day you walk into class and you see that Becky is upset and she isn't talking to anyone. You will still assume that Becky is friendly despite the lack of friendliness she displays. We must recognize that our assumptions of others can be mistaken, but we can resolve this issue by continuing to talk to that person and interact with them and gain a better understanding of them. This is perception checking. Perception checking is good when perceiving others. Instead of jumping to conclusions, you take steps to actually get to know the person. Perception checking is a 3-step process. This is where you describe the behavior that you notice, give 2 possibilities for the behavior, and then ask the person to explain their behavior. This should cut back on inaccurate perceptions. Now that we know that perceptions can be inaccurate and some steps that we could take for perception checking, let's talk about the different ways that we portray ourselves. We all portray ourselves in different ways and different situations, depending on how we choose to represent ourselves. To give off a certain preference is called identity management or impression management. There are 5 strategies of communication, which includes ingratiation, self-promotion, exemplification, supplication, and intimidation. Ingratiation. This is when someone portrays themselves in a certain way to gain someone's favor. For example, if Becky wanted to sit at the popular girls' table, she might start wearing more makeup or dressing in a certain way or acting like the other girls to be accepted and to hang with them. Then you have self-promotion. This is where someone behaves in a way to make themselves feel capable of doing something. If Becky wanted to run for class president, she might explain some activity. She might explain sometimes where she was a leader in different activities or in different clubs to show that she has the qualifications to be in that position. And then there is exemplification. This is where you show that you have high morals, that you are honest, and that you display integrity. So while Becky is campaigning for class president, she may show that she is trustworthy and dependable. And this would be an example of exemplification. Then you have supplication. This is where you give yourself off as helpless. If Becky was to beg her boss for her job back after being fired because she was a no-call, no-show due to a flat tire and no phone to call, this would be an example of supplication. And then there is intimidation. This is when you give yourself off as dangerous and when you want to intimidate someone else. A bully. Yelling at or threatening Becky if she refuses to do their homework would be an example of intimidation. All 5 of these are different ways that we would like to portray ourselves in different situations. Today, we have talked about person perception, how your perceptions of others may be inaccurate, and the 5 ways of identity management. Bush Barana once said, "Judging is acting on limited knowledge. Learn the art of observing without evaluating."